Service, you are excused. Yes. Hold on a minute. You didn't understand the answer? Okay. Yeah. No, he said no. That's why he said no. You cannot be fair, correct? Thank you, sir. That's all right. Okay, so we are going to hold back the original 14 that were up here, minus the people that we've already kicked off. And those 11 will be told to stay in room 580 for right now. So you understand that? If anybody that was up here,
they're staying back.
They stay back. Everybody else bring in and in the proper order. But this time we want 18. Yeah, 18 in the box.
Right, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Right.
21 through 46 should be, 21 through 34, and then 35, 37, 39, 41, 42, 46.
Now, do you only want them? Should we leave the other folks back?
No, we'll leave everybody here, but those are the only ones we're questioning.
Okay.
Right, okay, but the remainder of the veneer should be in the back of this room. Okay.
What number do you want in the top corner?
In the top corner, that would make sense that it would be essentially juror number 13, number 14. So there we go.
Here is what? 21 would be the next one.
Okay.
If you want to borrow it, give it back to me. That's all I have.
Do you want me to leave these empty now?
No, they're going to be up here now, too.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to, both sides are going to question 18 people now.
Okay. I'll get this to you when I come back.
We good? Okay. Light mix up in the front row here. Are you juror number 39 or 46? Do you have it reversed, or do you have it? That's what I thought. Okay. Y'all just kind of need to stand up and snake around. You two in the middle just swap seats, and you two on the ends swap seats. We should have 39, yes, 41, yes, 42, and 46, correct? Okay. And over on the end there, ma'am, you're 37, is that correct? And you're 35? Very good. I think that we've got everybody else. We can run through them. Let's just do that anyway. 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34. Very good, very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, were there any problems during the recess? Were you not able to resist the urge to talk about this case among yourselves, or did anybody try to discuss it with you? Very good. When we left off, it's back to the state, please.
Good afternoon, folks. And my name is Mark Pietmeyer, one of the prosecutors on this case for the state of Ohio. Actually, it'll go a little quicker this afternoon than it did this morning because I'm not going to repeat every question. What I'd like to do, though, is just run through quickly the questions that were asked just to refresh your memories in case any of you would have raised your hand had you been on the panel at the time. Mr. Gibson gave you the proposed witness list for the state of Ohio, as did Mr. Matthews for the defense. We've talked about the time frame of the case. Sequestration, it may happen we'll just see. But that is an issue possibly for some people. The fact that there is going to be some difficult testimony and photographs to look at. Judge Shanahan asked if any of you had a religious or political belief. We've had people sometimes saying that my particular religion does not let me sit in judgment on someone else, and they feel so strong about that they cannot be on a jury. So again, if that's the case, we understand that and accept it. No one, I believe, knows the defendant or any of the attorneys in the case. The fact that punishment, if any, in the case is up to the judge, not to any of you, and if at any point you start to think, you know, what if I do this? What might happen to Mr. Tensing? You really cannot do that. Mr. Gibson talked about, and sometimes in the media they get this wrong. There's the most serious offense in Ohio is what's called aggravated murder. And in some states it's called first-degree murder. It's murder one, and it's actually premeditated murder. That means you plan ahead of time to do something. That is not the charge here. This is a charge of murder, which is one step down from aggravated murder. It's still, the state would have to prove that the defendant purposely caused the death of Mr. DuBose, but it can be an instantaneous decision. It doesn't require any planning or anything else. And I'm sure there's no question that when Mr. Tensing went to work that day, this wasn't on his mind. I'm sure when he pulled over Mr. DuBose, it wasn't on his mind. But that's not an element of the case. Mr. Gibson mentioned there may be lesser included offenses. Sometimes in a case, the judge will say, if you don't find this, but you feel the defendant committed this, you may be given that option. The biggest thing, and everyone has talked about this, and I'll go through each one of you on this, but again, almost everyone has heard about this case, seen something about this case. A number of people indicated that yes, when they saw this videotape, or yes, when they talked to somebody at work, or yes, when they talked to the family member, they did begin to form an opinion, or maybe already formed an opinion. And a couple of you said, and if this is still the case, again, we want you to be honest about this, that you're so entrenched in that you don't believe you can set it aside. You don't believe that no matter what happens in the courtroom, you're going to come off of that. And again, if that's the case, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's kind of like the presidential election. You can say, I'm voting for this person, and I don't care what you tell me the other person did or what this person did, it's not going to change my mind. And I don't want to really compare this case to that, but if you're that entrenched in your view coming into this case, again, it's okay to feel that way, but I think you understand it's not, we can't have you on the jury because you really haven't heard all the evidence. I think most people, all they've seen, if anything, has been the body camera. And that is, you've heard all the witnesses are going to be called. Obviously, we don't need 20-something witnesses to identify a body camera footage. So there's going to be a lot more, and that's probably the most important question that came up from both sides. This case isn't about whether you're pro-police or anti-police or pro-any group. It's really, we're judging what this individual did on a particular day at a particular time, and that's it. And he happened to be a police officer working as a police officer at the time. And finally, are you willing to serve on the jury? So that was the questions that were asked generally to the panel. And what I like to do at this time is just go through one by one. And first of all, juror number 21, were there any of those questions that were asked earlier that you would have raised your hand to or you had a problem with? No. Okay. You were on a jury before, I believe, that did not reach a verdict. Is that correct? Right. Was that frustrating? No. Okay. Some people, they've had it after that. It's understandable. One of the things I noticed on your questionnaire, and you didn't raise it this morning, but your job you thought might be a problem, being away from work for this period of time?
Yeah, a work trip on the management meeting starts in 2 weeks. It's not a problem.
Okay. We just don't want that weighing on you. Again, no reason you could not be fair on this case? And are you willing to sit on this case?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror number 22. You did reach the video, and I think you said you began to form an opinion, but a later questionnaire question, you said this won't keep you from basing your decision on what you hear in the court, and you can set aside any feelings you have coming into the courtroom. Is that correct? Is there anything you've heard today that changes that in any way? And if the state proves their case, you can sign a guilty verdict. And if we don't, you can sign a not guilty verdict. I told you this would go quicker today, but that's, I'm one of those people, I've always said no one has ever been criticized for speaking too short. It's always going too long, especially, priests at sermons and that. It's just like, geez, oh, Pete, when are we going to finish this? In fact, I hope my pastor isn't listening because he'll stop me, but your questionnaires really answered a lot of our questions for us, and that's why we're not spending more time than we normally do. Juror number 24. Things I noticed you indicated that you believe that overall police officers do have a duty to and do protect and serve. Occasionally you get a bad apple. Is that a fair characterization? You don't have any bias one way or another towards police or in favor of the police. And you understand you're judging this officer on that day at that time. And are you willing to serve on this case, ma'am? Juror number 25. I think one of the things you put, and I believe Mr. Matthews covered it, you believe a defendant should testify in a case.
Well, I accept that.
Gotcha. And that's one thing, I think most of you meant that he's not precluded from putting on any type of defense, but, we understand and you accept the fact that if they decide to put on nothing, you can't say, geez, I wonder why that happened. You're okay with that?
After hearing the clarification of the question, I'm sorry.
Okay. And I think Mr. Matthews is right. It was just really it was more on us for not wording the question properly, probably more so than anything. And you're willing to serve on this case, sir? Thank you. Juror number 26. Always have to point out when there's a fellow Roger Bacon Spartan case here. Mr. Dieters couldn't get into Bacon. He went to St. X, so. You did see the video in this case, is that correct? And you indicated in your questionnaire that you really did not have an opinion after seeing that. Is that right? Anything change on that today? Any reason you cannot be fair? And are you willing to sit on this jury, ma'am? And same thing I asked juror number 25. You also thought a defendant should testify, but you understand he has a right to, but does not have to. Okay. Juror number 28. Okay. Was there a health issue with family members that was concerning you? I'm sorry to bother you with that, but...
My brother's had to break indicated very well as well. He will not be able to return to his apartment, so I am charged with packing up his apartment.
And would you rather not be on this case, or is this going to be a problem?
I think it is a problem for me to start because it's going to get back to my mom.
Okay. And again, I'm sorry to bring that up, but you mentioned it a couple times in your questionnaire. So you would rather not serve because of those issues? Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Juror number 29. One of the questions was, is there any reason if you were the defendant in this case, you would not want someone with your state of mind on this jury? And you indicated yes, I believe. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. Why is that?
My father, one time, was the social worker for Cook County Purchase Trial, but he was also the person that saw people before they went to trial, before they see if they were mentally fit to stand, if they had any issues. And like, basically that's what he did.
Okay.
Yeah, 38 years at the time. So, he also did work for Wasteman, local police force that I grew up in Don Fair Mills. He was also there to, as the insight person to see if they were okay to be on the police force. Because I was there to become policeman, and we interviewed them all with 3 or 4 others. And that was good for Don. It was a part-time job he went through one time and did it for 30 years as a volunteer. So, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
If he's mentally be fine to begin the trial and he's an officer, that's great.
Will that impact in any way you look at the evidence in the case? In the evidence, there's not any kind of, sometimes, in Ohio, there is a not guilty by reason of insanity defense, and that has not been raised. You're strictly judging what this officer, and you're going to hear a lot, like I said, there's not just the body camera. You're going to hear a lot about his training, how he's taught to handle certain situations. You're going to see what happened on this case. Those are all things you're going to take into account. But you're really looking at what he did on that date at that time and what the Ohio law is, and just like any other citizen, did he break the law? That's what you're looking at. And it's not really going to be beyond that. So does that create any issues for you? Any bias you have for or against police coming into this case? Okay. And are you willing to sit on this case, sir? For number 30. Again, you, like a lot of people, indicated that you saw the video and you started to form an opinion, but you don't think that's going to be a problem. Is that correct? Anything else you've heard here today that makes you think that you would not be a fair juror both to the state and to the defense? And ma'am, are you willing to sit on this case? Juror number 31, you also were one of the few that has not seen this. Is that correct?
I've briefly seen it on the news, but I didn't really pay much attention to it.
And was there, I think there was someone that you were close with that thought was charged and convicted with an offense that they did not do and thought the system was unjust. Was that correct?
Yes.
Does that bother you coming into this case today? No axe to grind or? Okay, and I'm just asking that because you did point it out. Again, we really appreciate your honesty in these questions, and we ask you difficult things, and it's just we're trying to get a feeling for what we've all said before. So no problem being fair in this case, ma'am? And are you willing to sit on this case? Okay. Juror number 32. You also looked at this but said you did not actually form an opinion. Still feel that way? And you even made a point of saying you feel strongly that you can be a fair juror. And I believe you pointed out a defendant should be able to put on a defense, not that he has to put on a defense. And no matter what you've seen or what you've heard, you can give both sides a fair shake in this case, ma'am? And are you willing to sit on this case? Juror number 33, you're an attorney for UC Health, is that correct? Any criminal work that you do?
Yeah, but one thing I forgot to disclose on the questionnaire is that I'm sitting on the board of CCM, and I'm the executive committee as well.
What is that, CCM?
The College of Insurance Companies.
Okay, at UC?
Associated with work
Okay.
affiliation.
Gotcha. Does that cause any problem sitting on this case? And you know one of the prosecutors in our office, Casey Fisher? Again, does that affiliation create a problem for you? I think you also indicated that you might know another juror that worked at IT at... Okay. Okay. We've had people sometimes, in fact, this was a question that we never ever used to ask, and sometimes we wind up with people on the jury that knew each other and hated each other, and it was just never asked because you don't think to ask it. So that's why we ask now, is there anybody else? So if you are on the jury with someone you know or recognize, that should not be a problem. Any reason you could not be a fair juror in this case, ma'am? And are you willing to sit on this case? Thank you. Juror number 34. You have seen the video and you had formed an opinion. I believe though you said that you can set that aside, is that correct? And there were questions, can you find the defendant guilty of murder? Yes. Can you find the defendant not guilty? Yes. And can you follow the instructions? Has anything changed since you filled out the questionnaire about any of those questions? Any reason either side should feel that you would not be fair? And ma'am, are you also willing to sit on this case? If, I think you indicated if this went past 2 weeks, it might be a problem. Is that a work-related or a financial problem, or? I think we're pretty comfortable that this case will be over sometime next week, but again, we cannot promise it. If you do, once you get the case and you are sequestered, then you're working, again, I cannot promise that, but I'd be shocked if it even went into that 3rd week. But, I mean, are you uncomfortable enough about that? You'd rather not sit on the case, or are you willing to sit on the case knowing that this could trickle into a 3rd week? Not anything on the spot, I'm sorry. With that in mind, would you rather not sit because that might be an issue? And we don't want anyone to be here that's going to worry about anything else, and that's why. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Juror number 35, number 8. You are a prior criminal jury, is that correct? No problem being on that jury. You also, we saw the video, but not form any opinion at this point. You also used the term, I think, a couple times, most police are fair, but there are some bad apples. And this isn't about whether Mr. Tensing is a good or bad apple, but on that particular day, did he break the law? You okay with that? Yes. Any reason, again, you could not be fair, sir? And are you willing to spend a couple of weeks with us on this case? Yes. Thank you. Juror number 37, 26 years as a guidance counselor. She probably heard a lot of unusual things, is that correct? Kind of a peacemaker. You'd be a great juror, because I'm sure you're used to listening to all sides, is that correct? Okay. You also had a prior jury some years ago. Anything about your prior work duty or your prior jury service that gives you a problem being on this case today? You made a good point. I think you said you've heard a lot of opinions about this case, but they're just that, opinions. Is that right? And anything about that, any of the opinions that you've heard that's going to cause you to be unfair to one side or another in this case? And you train and run for marathons still? I used to. My wife won't let me anymore. She says, I'm just too damn old. It's like, okay.
You don't have to go to that.
Oh, I don't. Trust me, I don't. Any reason you cannot be fair to them? And you're willing to sit on this case? Sure, we got the numbers right here. Juror number 39. You also have not watched any of the pretrial publicity about this case? And no, as a result, you are the blank slate that ideally we would have here. Anything you've heard so far that gives you a problem being on this case? Juror number 41. You work in the clerk's office in this building or one of these satellites? Okay. You indicated you've received information from, your husband works for UC, is that correct? And he's talked to you about this case? And you're one of the people that said, again, we appreciate your honesty, that you have formed an opinion and you don't think you can set it aside. Is that correct? Okay, and you still feel that way today? Okay. And again, again, there's nothing wrong with that. If you feel strong one way or another, you understand that it's whether it's for the state or against the state, it's not fair to have that opinion coming into this case. And is that the way you feel, that you cannot be fair? Okay. Juror 42, you expressed some work concerns also, is that correct? Is that still an issue, or you think you can, you've heard the schedule from the judge. Once we get the jury picked, good chance it'll be today, 9 to 1 until it's time to give the case to you sometime next week, we believe, and at that point, once it's yours, then it's up to the jury how long it's going to take. So with that in mind, do you think you can serve, or it's going to be a problem? Not an issue? Okay, great. Nothing else you really indicated on your questionnaire that you think makes you unfair to one side or another? And what you've heard here today, is there any problem? And you're willing to sit on this case? Thank you, sir. Juror number 46, I think most of the information you received was from the radio. Is that like Bill Cunningham discussing the case? Or? Okay. Because I know most people that hear stuff on the radio, it's talk shows, and they're really not giving the news, they're giving opinions about things. If that's the case, is there anything you've heard about that whether you agree with it or not, you're going to carry forward into this case? Okay. Any reason you cannot be fair in this case? And are you willing to serve on this case? Can I have just a moment, Judge?
Take your time.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Matthews, Ms. Callender?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Pete Meyer has been very thorough, and I hope to not repeat too much of what he asked. Was there anything that I asked anybody in this morning's group that was up here that any of you felt like you needed to respond to? Or was there anything that you feel would cause you to not be able to be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this case? Okay. I'm going to go through, because I think with each one of you I have a couple questions. Juror number 21, I think you told Mr. Pete Meyer that you have had prior jury service, and you're willing to disregard anything you may have learned during that service and decide this case solely upon what happens here. Is that correct? Okay. You did indicate a concern in your questionnaire about missing work. You're not concerned? Okay. And you also indicated some concern about your personal safety if you're asked to sit on this jury. Are those concerns allayed at this point, or?
I think the judge addressed some of the concerns. I was aware that there was going to be a lot of fees, and I was concerned.
But you're okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Juror number 22, you have, first of all, and I don't mean to be personal here, but you indicated on your questionnaire that you may have a blood pressure issue. I'm sorry. Is that a concern to you to the point where you don't think you can sit on this jury? You have to keep on using the restroom? Okay. Would you, again, you said it would make it difficult to serve. Would you rather not sit on this panel? Okay. You also indicated on your questionnaire that you have an opinion about guilt or innocence that you cannot set aside in this case. Is that correct? You do have such an opinion?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What'd you say? Okay.
You also indicated that in response, is there a reason you wouldn't want someone like you on the jury? And you said yes. You remember that? You still feel that way? I mean, I guess you're confusing me a little bit. Okay, you've indicated that your medical situation is such that you'd rather not be here, right? And I don't mean to embarrass you, but when you were here last week, did you post something on Facebook about help get me out of here? Okay. So you'd rather not be here, is that right? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, believe me, I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but as I've indicated from the outset, we want to find 12 people who, I don't want to say necessarily want to be here, but are willing to be here and can do it without issues. So that's what the purpose of these questions are. Juror number 24. From what I could read from your questionnaire, I was very impressed, but there was a lot of your writing I had some difficulty reading. And again, I'm not trying to embarrass you. There was a question number 64 on here that I couldn't for the life of me. Question 64 said, there have been a number of online analyses of the body-worn camera video depicting this incident. Have you seen any of these? And you wrote no. You checked no. But then there's something on here. Okay, well, it says something when the news started to talk about the case, that something to an African-American man, I turned the channel.
Yeah, it's like whatever, I guess the start of the video, is it a man sitting in the car?
Yes.
So when the news would pop that, I would turn, I don't know if they were talking about the case, about the video, so that was the extent that I saw, I guess.
Okay, and was that when this first happened back on July 19th, 2015, or was that?
No, that's when it like happened.
Okay, when you became aware that you were a potential juror here?
Right, once they announced, because I had a car and they said Tuesday, and I just put that.
Put two and two together?
Right.
Okay, and then you took it upon yourself to try to stay away from anything concerned with the case, correct? Okay. Is there anything that causes you to think that you could not be fair and impartial? Okay. Again, you indicated, I think, there was a question on the form about Black Lives Matter. Do you belong to Black Lives Matter? Okay, do you have any kind of affiliation with Black Lives Matter? Okay, would you agree with me that Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, all lives matter, none of that has anything to do with this case? You'll decide this case, the color of anybody's skin is not important. That you'll decide this case solely upon what happens in this courtroom. Okay. Okay. I'll just start throwing this stuff on the floor here. Juror number 25. I'm right there, right? Okay. You have some connection with Turin, Italy, correct? Is that through GE? I bring that up because Mr. Pietmeyer brought up Roger Bacon. I have a wife who has cousins there, and I was just there. I was with Gary. You indicated, and I think Mr. Pietmeyer cleared this up on your questionnaire, that you felt that that Mr. Tenzing should testify in this case.
Well, I think I got clarification on the question. Actually, what I think you should have the right to testify.
Okay, but you understand he doesn't have to if he doesn't, okay, but he will. Is there anything that has come up thus far that makes you think you could not be fair and impartial? Thank you. Juror number 26. There were a couple, there was a couple things on your questionnaire that confused me. This we don't have here, but on question number 97 on the questionnaire, the question was, can you set aside any feelings you have coming into this trial about the guilt or innocence of Raymond M. Tenzing and assure the court that these feelings will not influence your verdict? And you checked the box no. Do you remember? Okay, well, I assume that after you'd been through 96 prior questions, maybe you're a little tired and wondering what this nonsense is all about? Okay, so you can be set aside. First of all, I think your other questions indicated that you didn't have an opinion. Is that correct? Okay, and can you set aside anything you heard about this case before you came into this courtroom, decided solely upon what happens here? Okay, and you can be fair and impartial to all sides. And you also indicated that you did not believe that the criminal justice system is fair in America. Can you expound on that for me? I think it might be. Let me look here. That was number 115. Yeah, do you believe that the criminal justice system in America is fair, yes or no? And you check no. Okay. And you also indicated that you thought that a defendant should testify in order to prove his innocence. Do you, like juror number 25, are you cleared up on that issue? Okay, is there any reason that you can't be fair and impartial here? Thank you. Juror number 28, I think you just indicated that you've got some serious issues going on in your personal life that you think would make it not good for you to be here? Okay. And are you asking the court to excuse you? Okay. I also, just for the record, so the record is clear, you indicated on your questionnaire that you have an opinion, that you cannot set that aside, and you could not sign a guilty or a not guilty verdict, correct? Okay. Juror number 29. There was a question on here that I thought perhaps you might have answered because you were tired of all this too. I'm going to read it to you here because it's number 187. 187 said, is there any reason why, if you were the defendant, you would not want someone in your state of mind on the jury? And you checked the yes box. Was that a mistake, or were you having those feelings at that point?
That's my feeling, my personal opinion.
Okay. Do you still hold that opinion?
Yes, it's somewhat
Okay, maybe you're confusing me, but maybe it's good.
Directing it straight to you, just directing it straight to the question.
Okay. In other words, you can be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this board. Okay. That was the only question you answered, and I think that was the wording of the question more than... I mean, I guess the bottom line is there some reason that Ray Tenzing wouldn't want you to be sitting on this jury that because of the nature of the charge or because of what you heard about the case?
No.
Okay. You're willing to decide the case solely upon the evidence that's presented and the law that Judge Shanahan will provide to you at the end? Thank you. Juror number 30. You indicated on your questionnaire that you have a daughter in law school, correct? Again, one of the instructions Judge Shanahan will provide is that you don't talk to anybody about the case. You'll be able to abide by that? You won't go home and talk to your daughter and say, here's what we talked about today, what do you think?
Actually, I think my mom would probably be the first one to tell me.
Not to, good, okay. Where is she at, at Chase? Okay. And there was one question on here that I wanted to clarify with you, and that was question 192. As a result of answering this juror questionnaire, have you started to form any opinions about this case? I'm glad it said opinions about this case rather than opinions about this questionnaire, because I think by that point everybody would have had a whole lot of opinions. But it said, if yes, please explain. And you checked no and then crossed that out. You said, I would like to answer no to this question, but I did see the video release in July, and it is and I guess I did form an opinion in my mind. I'm still an open-minded person, and I feel I would answer yes or no on this question. I couldn't answer. Well, first of all, I think as Mr. Pietmeyer indicated, we would like people that have absolutely no knowledge of the case and no previously formed opinion. That's difficult to do in this case. Are you willing to put aside, assure me you'll put that aside and you'll decide, because you'll get a whole lot more facts about what's been put in the media in this courtroom, and that's what you have to decide on. You're willing to do that? Thank you. Juror number 31, correct? Okay. You're the kind of juror, I think, that Mr. Pietmeyer was referring to based on your questionnaire, that you're kind of a blank slate about this case? Okay. You have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, it looks like, from the University of Cincinnati. Are you willing to put aside anything you may know about the law and decide this case based on the law that Judge Shanahan will provide to you? Okay. Juror number 32. You indicated on one of your questions that you had an opinion as to because you watched the video, you had an opinion on whether Ray Tenzing was guilty or innocent. Remember that?
Well, my opinion on it is, I think the media shows you one side of it.
Okay.
So, there's always two sides.
At least.
Yes, and the argument is so clear. So, I don't take it off the media shows, I don't think it's the defendant's fault. Because that's really one of the
So you would be willing to put aside what the media said and decide this solely upon what happens here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This question here, there was a question, what are your opinions, if any, about the prosecuting attorneys and about prosecuting attorneys in general? And you answered, I always felt he had the best interest of the city in any actions he has had. And then the next question is, what are your opinions, if any, about criminal defense attorneys in general? And you didn't have an opinion. Should I take offense at that, or?
Oh, no, I don't, at first I hear Joe Beavers on the news, so I know whenever he's on, I guess you just always felt, I just always felt like he represented cities in Atlanta.
Okay, well, I mean, that's not going to make you, if Joe Dieter says something, that's not going to make you say, well, I got to take that to the bank, right?
No, that's just my little bit of knowledge I had about it. That's just-
Okay, so you'll decide this case based on the evidence that's presented by the state of Ohio and by the defense, and based on the law that Judge Shanahan will provide to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Any reason you can't be fair and impartial?
No.
Thank you. Juror number 33. Again, Mr. Pete Meyer talked about the fact that you're an assistant general counsel at UC, or UC Health, and they're different, right? Okay. You also indicated that you're a close friend of a prosecutor, and that you're on the board of the College Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati. Is there anything, first of all, as a lawyer, will you set aside what you know about the law and decide this case based on the law that Judge Shanahan will provide? And will you decide this case based on the evidence that's presented in court? And is there anything about your relationship with your friend in the prosecutor's office that causes you to have any discomfort, say, if the evidence warranted a verdict of not guilty, would that cause it, and you signed a not guilty verdict, would that cause a strain in your relationship with your friend in the prosecutor's office? Okay. And same with your connection or affiliation with the University of Cincinnati. Is there anything about that that causes you discomfort?
No, I don't even know that lawyer.
Okay. But I'm not bringing up the lawyers, just the fact that it's the University of Cincinnati is kind of a party to this action. Ray was an employee of UC. Okay. Not a problem. Juror number 34. You've indicated a couple times that you also are concerned about the financial ramifications this may have on your life, correct? Would you rather not serve? You also indicated that you had formed an opinion in this case based on what you heard or read, is that correct? And is it my feeling correct that you probably would not change that opinion? Well, I mean, if you say you've got an opinion, is that so ingrained in your head? Okay. I mean, you decide if your request to be excused is not granted and you are asked to sit on this jury, you would be fair and impartial to everybody? Okay. There was one question here I marked that I wanted to ask you about, and I don't think I need to ask you that. So, okay. Okay, juror number 35. I think the only thing that in your questionnaire that I noted was that you went to a whole lot of different schools, but UC was one of them, correct? Is there anything about your times you see that causes you any problems? Okay. I mean, and when I say causes you any problem, it's not going to prevent you from being fair and impartial to everybody in this case. Thank you. Juror number 37. I don't remember if Mr. Piepmeyer covered this, but you indicated that you've been on jury duty twice. Were both of those can you give an audible answer for the court reporter?
Yes.
Were both of those in Hamilton County? And one was a criminal case and one was a civil case, right? You understand that there's a difference between civil cases and criminal cases? Whole different ballgame. Are you willing to put out of your mind anything you may have learned about the law during the criminal cases you sat on and decide this case solely upon what happens here? Okay. Is there any reason you can think of that you couldn't be fair and impartial to both sides? Thank you. Juror number 39. You again indicated you were one of the two, I think, out of everybody that filled out those questionnaires that you hardly knew anything about this case. Based on what you've heard here today, is there any reason that you don't think you could sit on this jury, wouldn't want to, or can't be fair and impartial? Okay. Juror number 41. You work in the clerk's office, correct? Is there anything about your employment at the clerk's office that causes you not to want to sit here? You could be fair and impartial? You don't know? Okay, and have you discussed this with your husband? Yes. And have you indicated that you have an opinion to a degree, but you said on your questionnaire you thought you could set that aside, correct? Has anything changed today?
No. I would prefer not to.
Okay. But if we ask you to stay, you could? And you could be fair and impartial both to the state of Ohio and to the defendant, Ray Tenzing. Thank you. Juror number 42. You indicated a couple things on the questionnaire that I'd like to ask about. First of all, you indicated you have and I don't mean to embarrass you, but you have a hearing issue. Is that right? Have you had any difficulty so far? Well, I'm standing 2 feet away from you. Okay, so that's not a concern to you if we ask you to sit as a juror? Okay. The other issue you raised was a work issue, being away from your position at work. Is that something you can work around? Okay. Is there any reason that you could not be fair and impartial to everybody in this case? Thank you. And juror number 45. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Juror number 46. You indicated that you've got no issues with anything here, correct? Correct. And there wasn't anything on your questionnaire that jumped out at me, so I think I'm finished, Judge.
Sorry?
I think I'm finished.
Very good. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, does anybody need a comfort break at the moment? Is everybody okay? Couple of folks? All right. Judge Burke generously, if it is feasible and there are deputies, indicated that her jury room has 3 facilities. So sort of catty corner right there if we want to try to use that as well, speed things up. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Remember, do not discuss the case among yourselves. Don't allow anyone to discuss with you. Do not form or express an opinion about the case until it is submitted to you. All rise.